Hi there, everybody. Thank you for being with us tonight on our open book. Very good to be with you. Let's see if people are joining us. Hi there, Helen Skinner, also Elise, SR, Dorothy Joy, Rhonda, Nancy Steele, Mr. Dickens, AC Mulgard, Charles Borst, Marianne Mike Temkin, Nancy Steetle. Very good to say hello to you. David Case, Lori Tierney. I just realized today this mug or this mug, probably the blue one. I just realized today that it is I guess we would say the is it the 70th anniversary? Yeah. Wasn't it beautiful? Absolutely beautiful, what Caroline posted. It is the 70th anniversary of Edward Abbey's novel, The Brave Cowboy. By the way, a few years after it came out, I think about 8 years after it came out, 6 years, made into a fine film with and by Kirk Douglas. Edward Abbey was a Western writer, known as one of the early environmentalists, also identified himself as an anarchist. Some of those themes are implicitly addressed in the novel, which I read years ago, as you can tell by this old paperback reissue copy I have here. Let me just begin reading, because it is gripping from the very first. Edward Abbey begins by writing, "There is a valley in the west where phantoms come to brood and mourn. Pale phantoms dying of nostalgia and bitterness. You can hear them shivering, chattering among the leaves in the old, dry, mortal cottonwoods down by the river, whispering and moaning and hissing the wind over the black cones of the 5 volcanoes of the west. You can hear them under the red cliffs of the sun-gray mountains. On the other side of the valley, whining their past away with the wild dove and the mockingbird. And you may see one, touch one in the silences and space and mute terror of the desert, to ride away from the river, which in this barren land is the river of life. The Rio Bravo comes down from the mountains of the Colorado and the mountains of Santa Fe and flows into the valley, passing between the dead volcanoes on the west and the wall of mountains on the east. The river flows past the cornfields and mud villages of the Indians, past thickets of red willow and cane and scrub oak, to the fringe of the white man's city and under the 4-lane bridge of his national highway beyond the city and the bridge, and past more mud villages and more cornfields. The river flows beyond Thieves Mountain far to the south and vanishes at last into the dim violet haze of distance, of history, of Mexico and the Gulf Sea. But the river is haunted. The city is haunted. The valley and the mountains and the silent desert are haunted, troubled, vexed by ghosts, by phantoms and vagrant spirits. You can hear them down along the river, shaking and whispering in the leaves of the old cottonwoods. If you go there, you must hear them. Or out on the West Mesa around the black craters of the volcanoes, phantoms hissing and moaning with the wind. Or up there among the red cliffs and pinnacles in those immense gulfs of space. Under the mountain's rim, where the airless Air is cool and sweet, and the odor of juniper and lightning. With the mockingbird and the canyon wren and the mourning dove join with the phantoms in their useless keening. And out on the desert, away from the river and the valley, far out beyond the volcanoes, you may see one whirling and whistling like the devil of some dry, rocky wash, snapping the brittle lances of the yucca with the violence of its hate. It was into this valley of ghosts and smoke and unacknowledged sorrows, either Rhonda Palmer, that the cowboy rode one morning in October, not so many years ago. And I'll read a little from part one. That was the prologue. He was sitting on his heels in the cold light of dawn, drawing pale flames through a handful of twigs and dry crushed grass. Beside him was his source of fuel, a degenerate juniper tree, shriveled and twisted, cringing over its bed of lava rock and sand. An underprivileged juniper tree, living not on water and soil, but on memory and hope, and almost alone. To the north, across the rolling mesa of lava, there was a broad scattering of junipers, perhaps 2 or 3 to an acre. But here, where the man squatted before his fire, there was only one. And south and west of the 5 volcanoes, there were none at all. Nothing organic, but a rudimentary form of bunch grass and the tough, spiny yucca. Hi there, John Denny. The man coaxing his tinder into flame was not much interested in the burnt-out wasteland around him. Hi there, Seabuzz. Occasionally he would glance to the southeast and toward the city several miles away, stretched out like a long gray shadow on the other side of the river, or would take a look at the chestnut mare limping among the black rocks beyond the wash. Its forelegs held stiffly together, its iron shoes scraping on the stone. What description this is. It's absolutely remarkable, isn't it? But for the most part, he concentrated his attention on his small, sprightly fire. And when he did look away from it, his hands continued their work of breaking and adding sticks of wood. After a while, when the fire had been built up to about the size of a small frying pan and a residue of glowing charcoal had accumulated, lifted a canteen from a branch of the tree, filled a small smoke-blackened pan with water, and pushed it lidless halfway into the bed of fire. He watched closely for several minutes before the first globule of superheated air began to appear on the bottom of the pan. And as he waited, he broke a dead stick into short lengths and laid the pieces carefully on the embers. It was a cool morning, even in the sunlight. Surfaces exposed to the sun were becoming warm, but the air remained chill and sharp, as though the sunlight passed from source to object without heating the intervening medium. The bubble appeared. The man reached out toward the juniper and pulled a wrinkled, beaten old cavalry saddlebag close to his heel, unbuckled its one remaining strap, and removed from the interior a black skillet, battered and ancient, then a cylindrical tin labeled Handyman Tube Patching Kit, can of pork and beans, punch-type can opener, and a slab of salted mutton wrapped in a greasy back copy of the Duke City Journal. The mare on the other side of the wash was staring toward the river, flexing her soft, rubbery nostrils, twitching her ears. There was a dim fragrance of tamarisk in the air, and a tension, electricity in the old aching silence. The man wiped his nose once on his sleeve, sniffing a little, then unwrapped the mutton, opened his jackknife, and sawed several strips of meat into the skillet, which he set directly on the fire. The dimple in the bottom of the skillet reversed its curvature with a sudden ping, like a plucked violin string. My gosh, what writing! Making one of the slices jump. He wiped the blade of his knife on his jeans, closed it, and put it back in his pocket while the meat sizzled and smoked in the skillet. He opened the can of beans and poured them over the meat, the gluey mess streaming around the mutton strips, spluttering against the hot metal. By now the water was simmering in the open pan, its surface beginning to vaporize. The man unscrewed the lid from the tube-patching kit and emptied a certain amount of brown granular material into the water. I remember reading that the first time and thinking, brown, oh! Measuring by eye. Instantly, the aroma of hot coffee graced the air, and an involuntary smile appeared on his hungry and lean face. Within 5 minutes, everything was ready, or ready enough, and ready almost simultaneously. The coffee cooked and diffused densely through the boiling water, the mutton fried, the beans hot and smoky. The man began to eat, using his fingers for the meat, scooping the beans from the skillet with a sawed-off tablespoon, gulping down the scalding coffee in quick, short draughts direct from the pan. When he was finished, he leaned against the bowl of the crouching juniper. He wiped his mouth, OSR, on the back of his hand and sighed contentedly. After a moment, he pulled at the yellow string dangling from his shirt pocket and drew out a small white cotton sack of tobacco. He reached into the pocket, groping with thumb and forefinger, found a packet of wheat straw cigarette papers, took one of the papers, thin, brown, and gummed, and holding it delicately between his thumb and middle finger, he half rolled it to form a 12. He opened the sack with his other and tapped out some of the cheap, arid, pulverized tobacco. I wish he wouldn't smoke. It's no good for him. Of course, this was 1956. Drawing, tasting, releasing the first mouthful of smoke. He stretched out his long, thin legs, relaxing, and stared at the city beyond the river. Thanks for joining us, George Matthews. Stared at it from under the brim of his black slouch hat, his head tilted back against the tree, his hat pushed forward. The attitude of his head and hat, the gaze from narrowed eyes down past the flanges of his nose, the cigarette jutting at an acute angle from his mouth made his stare seem disdainful, unconsciously arrogant. He was a young man, not more than 30. His neck was long, scrawny, with a sharp Adam's apple and corded muscles. His nose, protruding from under the decayed brim of the hat, was thin, red, aquiline, and asymmetrical, like the broken beak of a falcon. He had a small mouth with thin, dry lips and a chin pointed like a spade. You can see why Kirk Douglas played this role, right? Didn't he have a cleft in his chin? His skin, bristling with a week's growth of black whiskers, had the texture of challah and the hue of old gunstock. He spat out what was left of the cigarette. I think I'm going to end there tonight. We'll see about tomorrow. Not sure about my schedule yet. But I want to read a little more of Edward Abbey's The Brave Cowboy on this anniversary. Well, thank you, Rhonda Palmer. Very nice of you to say that. And thanks for everybody writing with concern about my family in Europe. Caroline's post was just beautiful, wasn't it? Just so eloquent. And yes, we're worried about everybody, including, of course, Daisy Richard Simone. But they seem to be getting by. Late tonight, they were done by the sea. And I've been doing some swimming and trying to be as cool as they can. There's some thought that it's going to break, or not some thought. I think predictions say that it's going to break over the weekend. Oh, Mr. Dickens, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, exactly. So thanks for being with us tonight on our open book. Everyone, very good to be with you. And see you later. Take care. I was also noticing with the Brave Cowboy, but we'll get to know him a little bit. Yeah, they are cool. Take care. Bye-bye.